to give us some helpful tips and insights on how to wow international companies with your resumes. So without further ado, I am introducing Miss Sandra as well as Ate Maria for our live today. Hi.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, Philippines. Good evening, Canada. Sandra, you're on mute.
There we go. Good morning, good evening, everybody.
Hi. So today, I will be transferring, giving you the floor, Miss Sandra, so you can talk and discuss about resumes for our international students.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Fiona. And thank you for Yes Study to be, for having us here today. This is such an important topic to discuss. As the world starts connecting more and more, it's so important to be able to tailor your resume, especially for those international students, to really open up so many doors for them. It doesn't matter where they decide to go, if it's not their home country. So this is really important tips and just really basics that we're going to cover today. I think the exciting thing is with international students is that a lot of students get a chance to become global citizens, right? Because they're exposed to so many nationalities and just get to meet so many people from all over the world. And networking is so important. So tailor that resume is going to be key to a lot of the success. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Perfect. Are you able to see it?
Yes, Sandra, all good.
All right, fantastic. So like Fiona mentioned, today we're going to be talking about how to wow international companies with your resume. So a little bit about myself, and in terms of what makes me qualified to be able to talk about this, I am the regional director for Southeast Asia for Niagara College, Toronto. A little bit about my background, I actually studied in North America, where I did consulting in Florida and Chicago, and I've been living in Southeast Asia now in Thailand for the last, going on almost 6 years. And during my time here, I've had the privilege to just not only work with Southeast Asia, but also work with teams on a global scale. And so I'm going to just be sharing some very basic tips that I've learned with looking at resumes myself, as well as tailoring my specific resume throughout my career when I've been applying to international companies. So, first question that we always get, Fiona, is going to be, should I include a cover letter? Because a lot of the times the job postings are, it says optional, right? And the reality is, if it says optional and it's giving you that opportunity, the answer is yes, 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 include a cover letter. Don't get lazy. It's extra work, but you definitely want to include that cover letter, because that cover letter will give you an opportunity for you to stand out, for you to tell your story, or for you to maybe explain anything in your resume if there is a gap in your resume. This cover letter is that space for you to be able to do that. Then what is a resume, right? And when I say resume, I'll also be referring to, many people know it as a CV. So what is it? A CV and/or a resume is a selling tool. You are ultimately selling yourself. In a very brief as possible, just to let you know, it does take about 30 seconds or less. And keep this rule in mind, because I will be referring back to this. It takes 30 seconds or less for a recruiter to either decide to put you into the next stage or to completely, reject your resume CV. It only takes 30 seconds on average. So everything we're going to be discussing in this masterclass is how to optimize those 30 seconds, because remember, recruiters, companies, usually when they post, especially now when there's a job posting, they'll receive hundreds and hundreds, if not sometimes thousands of applications, of resumes, of CV. And so they're just quickly going through them. So remember the 30-second rule. Sell yourself in 30 seconds or less with having an outstanding resume or CV. Now, before we really jump into it as well, we want to remember everything we say, it might not necessarily apply specifically to your job because it depends on what field you are applying for, right? So we're going to be discussing some very basic tips, but remember, it's the most important thing is to always do your research in terms of the job you're applying to, the country you're applying to. It's so easy now to get on Google and do a quick on what do resumes in Canada look like? Or maybe you're applying to a job, let's say in China, right? What do resumes in China look like? What do resumes in Thailand look like? It also, a resume can change depending on the industry you are applying for. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So if you're applying for a sales job, is going to be, your resume will be a little bit tailored different as opposed to maybe you're applying to a writing, maybe you want to be an editor, right? So it's a little bit different. So just make sure you are, please, the second most important thing is just do a quick Google search and get an example of what the resume in that country looks like. Now, here we go with our tips. And excuse me, voice is a little bit raspy today. The tips we want to remember. Number one, I just finished. Do your research. If you find examples of CVs in the country you are applying for, and we're really going to dive into this because in the next couple of slides, I'm going to show you the example of a perfect CV, maybe in a place like Asia, is very different than what a typical perfect CV or resume in North America would look like, and because of the laws behind the countries. So in a place like Canada, for example, so definitely do your research. You can have the perfect resume. Remember, it only takes 30 seconds for an employer to decide whether they will move you on to the next round. So don't make a silly mistake because maybe you included a picture, or maybe because you didn't include a picture, and we will discuss that in a little bit. Now, when possible, write your CV in the native language. So if you're applying to an English-speaking country, then absolutely tailor your resume, and if you can make sure it's in English. If you're, for example, if I live in Thailand, maybe if I wanted to apply to a Thai company, right? If I also spoke English and Thai, it would be quite beneficial for me to highlight my Thai skills in that resume. So that's tip number 2. Tip number 3 is if you speak more than one language, make sure you highlight it, and you also highlight the level in which you speak it, meaning the level of your speaking fluency, the level of your writing, the level of your reading. Especially for international companies, highlighting your multiple language skills they're going to literally be wowed by it, right? So if you do have that talent where you speak more than one language, don't hide it. Make sure that it's highlighted. Tip number 4, your CV or resume ideally should not be more than 2 pages long. Remember, 30-second rule. So if you submit a 5-page resume, and maybe the recruiter has, let's say, 50 other resumes to scan before they decide who they're going to interview. 5 pages is too much, ideally, right? In a typical. So no more than 2 pages, ideally including that cover letter, and then you have your resume or your CV. But do not, if you have had 15 jobs, do not put every single one of those 15 jobs, because then it makes your resume very, very long. And we will talk about that in a little bit as well. But remember, 30 seconds, how do you wow international companies in just 30 seconds, right? And that's by getting to the point and highlighting specifically, you know, who you are by you selling yourself. The only time a resume should be longer than the 2 pages, ideally, it will be if you are applying for a job that maybe you need to show your portfolio. So maybe you're applying to a multimedia type of job. So then you want to show your a video, or you need to prepare a presentation, right? So that's why the first tip is do your research. What industry you're applying to, and what does that CV in that country look like? But rule of thumb, you don't want to make it more than 2 pages long. Now, tip number 5, when creating your resume or your CV, make sure that the font you choose is something easy to read, and make sure that your key points are easily to point out, right? And I will show some examples later on. Now, when we move on to number 6, and excuse me, always start by putting your name and contact details at the top of your resume or CV. Why? Because that makes the recruiter and the employer find your information very, very easily. Again, going back to that 30-second rule, if you have to make somebody search for your personal information to how to contact you, they're most likely just going to skip your resume and then move on to the next. So always make sure that your contact information is very easy to find and at the very top. If you're including a phone number, especially when dealing with international companies, if you're including a phone number, make sure you put the country code, right? Easily mistakes, but you would be surprised how many people apply to international companies and do not put their country code. Again, 30-second rule, if you make it too difficult for them to be able to contact you, they will just skip to the next one. If you are applying to a country where you are require or is the standard to put a picture of yourself on your resume, make sure it's a very professional looking picture, a very professional headshot. It should not be a selfie. It should not be, you know, your entire self. It should be a headshot. And ideally you want to, you know, wear quite professional clothing as well. Now, for international companies, make sure that it's quite important when applying to an international company to notate the status of your visa. Will you require a visa sponsorship, or do you have one? So for example, with Niagara College Toronto, we do have a postgraduate work permit that students will be able to get after they graduate their studies with us, and it can range anywhere from 1 up to 3 years of study. Something like that, when applying to example for in Canada, will be quite important for you to highlight listen, I have a postgraduate work permit, it's no problem. I'm here for up to 3 years. So they know that they can depend on you and they're not going to have to sponsor you. Now, when it goes into our typical resume or CV outline, this is some of the main things you want to cover. you want to make sure your name and contact information, your objective, your work experience, educational history, skills, awards, and certifications, and your references. Now, let's dive a little bit more into that and see what that looks like. Your name and contact information should include things such as your name, your address. Now, if you are applying for a country in Canada and you live in Canada, then your address should be your Canadian address as opposed to your, let's say, Filipino address. So that's quite important to remember. A reliable phone number and a reliable email address. Now, tips to remember when adding your name and contact information is make sure your email address also is something professional, right? This is again, 30 seconds to sell yourself. Make sure that everything you're putting, your picture, your email address, everything is professional. You don't, for example, my name is Sandra Tenorio. Something simple would be sandratenorio@gmail.com, right? Or usually I do my initials, stenorio@gmail.com. If you put something that's not professional, let's say, I don't know, I could say, Princess Sandra@gmail.com. Unless that's my name, it's not necessarily the most professional name. So just make sure little things you're checking before you're putting your resume and your CV together. Make sure it works and make sure it's professional. Now, the objective, this really depends on the job that you are applying for, but keep it short and get to the point. So for example, if you're applying for a sales job, you could say, my objective is to find a role within sales because X, Y, and Z, right? It does not have to be very long. Remember, if ideally you include your cover letter, you might not really even have to put in your objective because if you have your cover letter, your objective would have been covered in that cover letter. Now, work experience. This is a very important thing to include in your resume. In your work experience, you want to highlight in the work experience description how that job best fits for the role you are applying for, right? So for example, let's say I'm applying for a sales job. And let's say in my previous job that I'm adding, or in my current job, I work at I bake cookies, let's say, right? I'm a baker. Now, since I'm applying to a sales job, yes, I'm going to put I'm a baker or I work for a bakery. But in that job description, I'm not going to talk about the methods I use for baking cookies. I'm not going to talk about the maybe ingredients that I use to bake cookies because I'm applying for a sales job. So if I work at a bakery, what I'm going to talk about in my job, what I'm going to highlight is how I sold cookies, how maybe I developed this new way of maximizing my cookie sales. And, I exceeded and I outsell the cookie inventory and the bread inventory every single day, right? That type of description is relevant to the sales job. And then I will put how much I made from my baking sales, cookie, bread, muffins, how much revenue I made from all of that, because I am applying to a sales job. Now, if I was applying to, let's say, let's say writing, right? A writing job, maybe I would then in that bakery example, then I would type about how I redid the menu, I rewrote the menu, I put descriptions, how I would go online and post in terms of like the marketing descriptions, right? So it's the same job, but you're highlighting different aspects depending on the type of job you're applying for. So keep in mind that your work experience, when you are putting your work experience, you're putting a brief bullet points or description under it, but it ties to the type of job you are applying for, right? It reinforces, hey, I'm good for this job because this is what I have done in my previous jobs that ties to that. So keep that in mind. Another thing to remember when putting your work experience, if you put and it's concerning if you put maybe you had 8 jobs in the last 2 years, and each in your it fills up too much space. Remember, you only have 30 seconds, but it fills up so much space in each job you've been at for less than 1 year. It's quite concerning for international companies, right? Because when you're applying to an international company, they are also looking what value can this person bring? How long will they be able, they want to also invest in you. So if they see that you have not been at any of your jobs for, more than for every job you've ever had, you skip really quickly and it's been less than 1 year, it's very concerning for companies. The companies want to see stability and they want to see results, right? So just keep that in mind when choosing what jobs to put on your resume or CV. Tailor them to the type of job you're applying to, but make sure that you put the time, your date span, and hopefully you've been able to highlight some jobs where you've been in that position for longer than 1 year. Your educational history is very important to put. Excuse me. It's very important to put on a resume or CV. It's so important that you definitely want to highlight where you studied. International companies want to see how international you are as well. So because that shows that you can step outside of your comfort zone and you can excel in that. So when you study outside of your country and you put, for example, with Niagara College, I studied in Canada, right? International companies are going to be like, wow, there's this person from the Philippines and they already have international experience themselves because they studied in Canada. It looks very, and wow, and you can add then your different languages, you can add then your different work experience. It, all way around is, wow, look at how much this person really stands out, right? And remember, 30 seconds. If you will forget everything I said in this masterclass today, I just want you to remember one thing. You only have 30 seconds to wow international companies. So make sure that you are putting your international studies on there and you're also putting the location of where you studied. Skills and awards is another excellent wow factor. School certificates, certifications that you have earned during your career, or any volunteer community work that you have done, highlight it. It's a perfect, again, this is where you want to highlight this because this is what's going to make these international companies go wow. So the great tip to remember. References are optional. Only put references if they ask for it. So in your resume, remember 1 page, 2 page max. So if they're not asking for your references at that moment, don't use the valuable real estate spot that you have on your resume to sell yourself. Only put references if they ask. And if they do ask for resumes, which many employers will ask you for resumes after, they will ask you for references after they interview you. So when you do provide your references, make sure that they are professional references. What I mean by this is, as much as your mom, loves you, or your mom or dad loves you, of course they will give a wonderful reference, but that's not the reference that you want. You ideally want a professional reference, maybe a former boss, a former colleague. And make sure when you are giving your references that the people that you put as a reference, they know that they might be contacted. So let the person know, let's say if it's your former boss or a former colleague, just give them a quick call and say, hey, John, for example, I just want to let you know that I put you down as a reference. I'm applying for this company in this job, and they might be contacting you, to give a reference about me. So just make sure that they're not surprised and it's somebody recent, okay? Now, this is a perfect example of two very good resumes. But remember at the very beginning, I said, make sure you are researching for what a typical resume in the international country you are applying for. For example, the resume on the left could be a perfect resume in a place like Asia, right? It would include the picture. Many times when I'm hiring people in Southeast Asia, I will see they'll put their marital status, they will put their age, they will put whether sometimes if they have children or not, whether sometimes if they're male or female. It's a lot of personal detail that is quite norm in, for example, the Southeast Asia customs when applying for a job, and they'll put a picture. Now, the one on your right is going to be a very perfect, great resume in a place like Canada, for example. There is no picture. There is no personal details such as such as age, sexual orientation, whether they're married, single. And that is because there are very strong anti-discrimination laws, especially in places like Canada and the US, where they do not want to say that they hired you because of your sexual orientation or because of the way you look like. So because of that, people do not include their picture and those type of personal details. So if you're applying to a place like Canada, do not include your picture and do not include your very, very personal information, because that is not what they're looking for. And actually your resume could get rejected because they don't want to be seen that they picked you because of the way you look like, right? So keep in mind the country you are applying to and the customs that that country has in place. And all you need is a quick Google search and you will know. Now, at Niagara College Toronto, we help you with all of this. Again, these are very, very basic tips, but don't be surprised if any of this information was new to you, because again, if this is the kind of thing that you don't know unless someone tells you, right? So just remember, those are very basic tips. At Niagara College Toronto, we help you above and beyond with this. We have workshops. We have an excellent career advising department that will help you tailor your resume, will help you tailor your LinkedIn profile, will help you get ready for that interview. And the kind of 4 industries that we specialize in is business, human resources, and hospitality and management. Hospitality and tourism management. Now, in Toronto, it's an excellent place if you do want to work while you're studying, or even the kind of career and networking you will make in terms of being able to be in that city is phenomenal, just because it's such a multicultural city and there are so many headquarters located right in the city of Toronto. The exciting thing about Niagara College Toronto is we're located right in the heart of the business district. So the kind of access you will have will be phenomenal and will be able to really advance your skills when it comes to tailoring your resume or CV to that specific area of study that you're interested in. Now, we do offer a postgraduate work permit. So what does that mean? A postgraduate work permit means that you will be able to live and work in Canada, ideally Toronto, right when you finish your studies for up to 3 years. Before then you can apply for, and then after you can apply for your permanent residency in Canada. So this is fantastic. Also, with Niagara College Toronto, you can work while you study. You can work 20 hours while you're studying during class sessions. And then you can work up to 40 hours when you are on break. So excellent opportunities. And again, we help you. Everything I've talked about today within our workshops, we dive a lot more deep in detail, specifically tailoring to your industry. So we will guide you through every step of the way. Now, we're really happy for the Philippines. We do offer, we have scholarships available that Maria and Fiona will be able to discuss a little and give you more information on. We do offer up to $1,000 scholarship, which is fantastic off your first semester, to be able to really get you up on the best start to your dream career, right? And that is what we are here for. We're here to make sure that you are well equipped and well knowledge to be able to advance to the career of your dreams. And we do that by being able to give you master classes. We do that by the support that you will have within the country, as well as the support that you will have within the campus in itself. But those are just some of the very basic things to cover. I will hand this off back to Fiona, and if anyone has any questions, please let me know. Back to you, Fiona.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Sandra, for your presentation. I had just have 1 or 2 questions from our viewers. So one of the questions is that, is it better to put a photo on the resume?
Right, that's a good one. Depends what country you're applying to. If you are applying to a job in Canada, I would say no, because as I mentioned a little bit earlier, Canada has very strict anti-discrimination laws, and no employer in Canada will ask you for a picture before they ask you to interview. They will not ask you for your age. They won't ask you for your marital status, because that is considered it could easily open up the company for a lawsuit, and someone could say, I didn't get the job because, maybe, my skin is too dark, or my skin is too white, or because I'm a female. So especially in North America, they take those things very, very serious. So for a company in Canada, do not include a picture, and do not include because then they will reject your resume, because they'll be like, oh, you could have a wonderful resume, but you put a picture, and they don't want to make it seem that maybe they hired you because of the way you look like. So they would reject it, right? Maybe for a place like Thailand, for example, if there's a company in Thailand, they will want to see a picture, because that is the norm of that country. But so remember, you want to be quite international. You're a world citizen. So make sure that you are just doing a quick Google search for the country you are applying to. But in Canada, ideally, do not include a picture.
Yes, that's right. So based also on my experience when I came here from the Philippines, it's one of the shock for me because my resume that I brought from the Philippines have a photo. And
Mm-hmm.
when I came here and I studied, of course, in the school, they taught us also that okay, we shouldn't include a photo because it's for the anti-discrimination as well for companies. And also having the cover letter all the time on every application is also crucial for applying, as you mentioned earlier. I also love that you mentioned to with the languages that we speak. It is very important also because some of the companies may be looking for specific someone who specifically speak your language. Like based on my experience as well, again, my work right now, they were looking for someone who can speak Tagalog. So if they didn't see on my resume that I can speak Tagalog, then they would have skipped my application. I would have missed this the opportunity.
Mhm.
Um, and lastly, the one thing that our international students can really leverage on is volunteering part, as you've mentioned. Just being involved in the community, even if it's online, since it's pandemic right now, so that the companies can see how active the students are in and how involved they are in the place that they are in. So those
Mm-hmm.
are very important steps as well. We are running out of time.
Yes.
Just I'm sorry about that, but thank you so much for your time, Miss Sandra. Thank you so much
Thank
for.
you.
I know it's very early there right now, so thank you for giving us this time.
Thank you. Thank you
Uh,
so much.
okay. For anyone who wants to who have any questions, just comment them down below, and we will answer it on the comments. Okay. Thank you so much, and
Thank you.
goodbye.
Bye
Bye.
bye.
Bye.